We are about to embark on an immersive journey through the corridors of our minds. Stand by as we prepare for departure.
Welcome aboard, everyone, to the Productivity with Peace of Mind podcast adventure. Our journey will begin in just a moment. Inhale deeply and exhale. Our voyage takes us on a captivating tour, diving deep into the intricate layers of our thoughts and imagination. Brace yourselves for the complexities of our evolution. For a safe and enjoyable journey, stay seated, secure your helmet and protective goggles, and keep hands, feet, and legs inside while the ride is moving. Now relax and enjoy.
What if I told you that running our homes and families and personal lives could be just as efficient as business? Today, we're joined by an expert in family dynamics and efficiency who started as a leader in business and is now here today to share her insights on creating harmony and structure at home and in our personal lives. Sunny Jensen is the owner of Unbreakable Family Academy, trained teacher, principal, and educator with over 30 years of experience. She's had some entrepreneur adventures as well, including running her own school, as well as a medical distribution company during COVID-19. Hey there, Sunny, welcome. It's so good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm very excited to be here and very excited to be your guest. Yes, I had a school. I was in education for a little over 15 years. Prior to that, I'm the oldest sibling, and somehow in my adventures in life, I ended up being the guardian for several children and helping parents with their children. So I've always had a knack for this area. It's a passion for me. I have a really funny story of how my husband and I met, how we got married. We never dated. We went straight from knowing each other, being friends, to he says I forced him to get engaged. I did not. He knew he wanted it. Anyway, so we were engaged for 1 month. We got married when I was 18 years old. He was 23, and we've now been married for 32 years.
Man, what a success story, right?
It's crazy. Crazy. Who knew?
It's incredible. Well, you know, when we talk about productivity and getting things done and being organized and making decisions and, building systems and being in control of our life, a lot of the focus does end up being around business and at work and our professional careers. And, you and I talked about it yesterday, but a lot of times our home life and our family and our personal life can easily be forgotten. So we might be meticulous in our business or in our career, but then maybe our family life is a mess. Or if you are just at home running a family, you might not have the systems in place. So take us through what that looks like to be the executive of your household and how you apply these kind of, business and organizational principles and systems to your home life.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to take you back to 2007 for a second because, a lot of the times you have to really fall on your face to figure things out. And I fell on my face around 2006, 2007. My health, my well-being, it was all at stake. And I was really having a tough time. The school system was not serving my children right, partially because of me and not having control over what was going on. But when you're dispersed and frantic and confused, it rubs off on everybody, on everything. Even your pets end up being untrained, unhandleable animals. And it just shows. It
Yeah.
shows. So in 2007, I had that moment where I was like, okay, I have to change something because I can't live my life this way. It's not how I intend to have this life go. Um,
Mhm.
so I kind of fell back on, we didn't really mention this in the beginning, but I was a strategist and I was a manager over companies, and I helped to expand business. So I do have a business background, and
Yes.
that kind of is what I fell back on, because there wasn't a lot to fall back on family. There wasn't a
Yeah.
how-to book. You've got what to expect when expecting, and it really ramps you up, and you understand what to expect of a 2-year-old, which
Yeah.
is just total chaos. And you've got your terrible twos, your terrible threes. I was like, wow, everything's just terrible. So how do you fix this so it's not? Like, why do we have to do this
Yeah.
terribly? And
Yeah.
so I started with this thing, and I actually pulled this off of my computer. So it's like a little sheet of paper. And in 2007, so just to give you an idea, my kids were 7 and 9 or 7 and 8. Um, and they are boys to the fullest extent. They ran my household. People talk about the very self-determined, the very I know what to do kind of children. I had 2 of them. And my mom says it's payback because apparently I was also like that. So
Oh,
I started with that, and I started structuring it, and I did drills, a code of conduct, a schedule, because I just needed to find something that would put structure in. So I'm just going to read one so that because we're going to talk about this later. I want to get into this, but
yeah.
one of the things I had my kids do, and I'm just going to read it. It says, go over with me what privileges you have now. Now remember as far back as you can and notice how you have gained privileges since that time. So I
Mm.
wanted to orient them to this idea of they were growing up, and what did that actually mean to a child? What is that? And I wanted to focus on the positives because, like I said, I was really I was tired of the terribles, and I wanted to get their focus and attention on what was positive about growing up, what inspired them to grow up, what were they excited about, like what were those goals that they wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
what a cool way to teach that self-reflection from an early age, because I think a lot of us, maybe in the, coming generations, they'll have that. But I mean, I know for me and anyone I know my age and older, they do not have that in their upbringing.
no, it's there's so many missing elements. And I joke around, in home ec, and I don't even think there's home ec anymore, but when I went to school there was home ec, and everyone got a little like basket, and we had a raw egg in our basket, and we were told not to drop the egg, and that egg represented our baby. And some of us dropped the egg, broke the egg. We were like, oh, we're failures. Like, you know, I'm going to drop the baby. I'm going to forget to feed the baby. Like, how horrible is this going to be? But there was no, like, what even is economics mean? Like, people are like, oh, home ec. And you're like, well, that's home economics. And that's talking about energy. And how do you conserve and use energy in the best way possible so that you get the most bang out of your buck? And it isn't just economics talking about your money, because that's also important, but money, time, energy, focus, all of this is really, really incredibly important to life.
Yeah. How do we know if we are out of alignment in our home or with our families?
Oh, it's the easiest thing. You don't feel good. You're upset. You're arguing. You're fighting with your kids. You're fighting with your spouse. If you start feeling like you're sad, depressed, whatever anxiety. Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how much anxiety I've had. Like it's like, what are people thinking about me? Comparing yourself to others. If you're comparing, you've lost yourself a while ago because you're trying to figure it out by comparing. There's a thing within, you're trying to improve and you're comparing yourself to others, except for it never ends with improvement. It seems to only end with disappointment.
Yeah, I agree because comparison to other people ends up sending us in 50 different directions really fast. Versus we can look at what's around us and observe and witness and even talk to people about what are they doing, what works for them, and then reconnecting to ourselves to recognize, okay, what actually works for me? Because we know what works for us. And if we take all the information and then make those informed decisions from there, we can get where we actually want to go, not just like following your neighbor.
Yes, you're educating yourself. You're constantly
Yes.
learning.
Yes. Yeah. So you talk about the need for structure in our family dynamics. How do you then help other families create that for themselves? And how do they build their own strong home?
Wow, this is such a great question because as a principal and a teacher, I've had hundreds, probably even thousands of parent teacher conferences. I've had parents come into my office so upset about, wow, that's for a whole different time. We can talk about that another day. But I've talked to several parents and I really just wanted to help them. And I wanted to get down to like, what are some core ideals and values? And I would sit down and go over their life with them and structure something for them. It would be very specific, very tailored for their life. And it would always improve the household. I have a pretty decent success rate on being able to help others. And it's something I am very proud of because I can really dig in, I can understand. I have absolutely no judgment. It is one of the things you must have as an educator when you're working with families. And, I come from a family with, well, we have several divorces. We had drug addiction. We had, some of my cousins were in jail. I've lost some of my cousins. I have a very colorful background. And so to have any idea or thought that someone's life should be some way would be so hypocritical of me. And so when you're talking to other people and talking about their family, it's very specific to them. Um, Anyways, so to answer your question, what I've done is I had to pull back and go, okay, what are those core structural pillars about the family that I need to create? And like, what was I teaching? Because I didn't know. And part of it is, I had to create mindset. Like, what is the mom's mindset? What is her end goal? Where is she going towards? And then how do you create a productive family? Well, you have to have goals, you have to have purposes, you have to have an ideal of what you're trying to get to. Even if it means your 2-year-old's going to be an astronaut one day, go with it. It's a good goal. Like, just go with it. Nothing's too
Yeah.
unreal. And it's always going towards future and something that's creative. And then I was like, wow, you have to have a household organization chart. Like a business has a CEO, COO. So what's your C-suite? What does that look like? What are the kids? What are their positions? So I
Yes.
started putting this all together. I defined a team. And then I dig right into discipline because discipline has so much misinformation on it. And people go back from like, they confuse discipline with punishment. Even if you look it up in the dictionary today, the definition in the Encarta dictionary is such horrible crap. Like it doesn't actually define it from if you go back to the derivation of the word. But discipline comes from disciple. It's all about teaching and learning towards positive reflection so that you can achieve your goals. So how do you
Yeah.
do that with a child, especially when you're about to lose it and they're pushing your buttons? So I've created these pillars that kind of reined in how did I help other families? And I have that in my course.
That's amazing. Well, and I know a lot of people can tend to be a little bit resistant to structure or routine, and they think, oh, well, if I have, all of this structure and I plan too much, I won't have freedom and flexibility. But, we've talked about how that can actually, like when we have that structure, we can reduce conflict and have more harmony in our home. And it can actually go better because you've planned ahead. Tell us more about that and what that looks like for you
Okay,
or for
let,
your
let's
clients.
let's take a simple idea. Okay, I'll just give a simple example of that. So when you go to the supermarket and you're hungry and you walk around the supermarket and you circle it and you just keep putting your shopping cart and there's no semblance of what it is. It's like, oh, potato chips sound really good right now. And oh my gosh, that chocolate chip cookie looks amazing. I'm going to put that in. And oh gosh, I should have some protein. So I'm going to grab this rotisserie chicken. And you're sort of like piling it in. And have you ever gone home with like just a miscellaneous shopping bag and you're like, wow, okay, and now you're eating things that just appeal to you and there's no semblance of okay, so I'm actually feeding myself to be able to have some good protein and nutrition. And
Yeah.
those chocolate chip cookies are usually the easiest thing to go to, right?
Yeah.
So if you go to the supermarket and you have your meal plan done and you're like, okay, so tonight I'm going to have hamburgers for dinner and with that is going to be potato salad and we're going to have lemonade. Just say. So then you make a shopping list of exactly, you've got your meat, your tomatoes, your lettuce, your buns, and whatever you need, right? And when you go to the supermarket, it takes you what 30 minutes to walk in and get everything and you go out. And what did you do? You just created more time for yourself. You made it simple. You don't feel fogged over. You don't feel like you're like some space cadet. You're not sitting there talking to people in the aisles asking how their day went because you're focused. So the same goes with a family. So if you have that structure in, and even though it seems like a bit more work in the beginning, but what if you knew? What if you knew exactly like, oh, I know that these are the routines and the structures of our family? What if your kids knew? Okay, so if I don't clean my room, I know that I'm not going to get my screen time this weekend. Or if I don't do blah, I know that this is the consequence. Now you're getting into them thinking with it instead of using threats. You can do it the same way. If you don't clean your room, you don't get any screen time. Okay. You're going to get tears, upset. It's going to be a battle. Okay. But prior to that, hey, these are the agreements. By this day, I need your room clean. This is what it means to have a clean room. Just have these straightened out and blah, blah, blah. And if you have that done, you get an hour extra of screen time or half hour, whatever it is. And if you don't have it done, then you don't get to have that time until you get it done. Does that make sense? Do we have an agreement? Yeah, mom, we have an agreement. Okay, good. So we're going to shake on it, pinky promise, whatever it is, right? Now,
Yeah.
when it actually happens, you have it mapped out already as a parent. So you're not sitting there going, I told you once, I told you twice, I told you three times. Oh my gosh, the things that come
Yeah.
out of our mouth when we're reactive. Uh,
Yeah,
and
for
instead, it's
sure.
like, well, we have this agreement, we pinky promised on it. So just let me know when it's done. And it seems
Right.
difficult, but I'm telling you, it calms it down. It doesn't make it perfect, but it definitely makes it calmer.
Absolutely. And how do you balance that? Because, we're talking about the piece of having the structure, setting the expectations and the boundaries up front, but we've also talked about, still making it fun and meaningful and exciting. So, how do you balance that for yourself?
Okay, so I'm a very adventurous person. My dad raised me with like since I was like 2 years old or probably younger actually, had one of those backpacks where he'd throw me in his back and we'd go scaling mountains and go camping and I mean, he was crazy. We would go to this place. It's called the Kern River. Anyone watching this, look it up. But on your way in, it has a sign that gives you the death count of how many people have drowned in that river.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I had four siblings. We'd go camping on the side of that river, and he'd tie a rope from one tree to the other. And he would be like, kids, you can play in the river. Make sure you always grab the rope. Don't go past the rope, because if you do, you're going to die. and Sunny, because I was a swimmer, you have to swim after them and save them if they do. And so this was my upbringing. It was kind of, I was as an adult, I'm like, Dad, what were you thinking? And he goes, I probably wasn't. But anyways, we all survived, which was good. So I balanced it with a lot of adventure, a lot of things that I believe in going outdoors. I believe in looking at things, finding animals. I love animals. My kids do too. We did a lot of sports. We did a lot of zoo camps. As they got older, and as because I don't know how everybody else starts, but I know when my kids were really little, we were broke. So the adventures were very local. They were very going to the park, finding neat things, is all on a very tight budget. And as that grew and expanded and stuff like that, we got to travel with them. We're really blessed that my husband got a job that created the ability for us to go to places like Costa Rica and Hawaii. And so the adventures got bigger as they got older, but I always put their attention on how they earned it. I always talked about, I always tied the dots of or tied the string, however you say that. But it was like,
Yeah.
look, you've been doing X, Y, and Z, and these are our agreements, and you have those in place. And now we're doing this. And so I connected the dots, even like how we just read that drill in the beginning of look at what you had a year ago and look at what you have now, or 6 months ago, or whatever. My son, he's 26 years old. He's going to be 27. And I asked him what was one of his privileges that he was so excited about getting. His answer shocked me. I was actually shocked. He said, moving up to the grown-up table during holidays.
Oh.
I was like, what? I probably should have never had you at the kid table. And he goes,
Oh.
I loved it because it was like a sense of pride that I went from being a kid to being a grown-up, and now I got to sit at the grown-up table. And I was like, wow, that really surprised me.
That's really cool.
So another example is accountability. So I made our household where we were actually all accountable for each other. It wasn't just, I'm the adult, you listen to me, do as I say, not as I do. Like I had the expectation that I had to set an example for my kids. So did my husband. And we gave them okay to call us out. And now realize it wasn't rude. It was all done with very good communication, except for maybe this one day. So, oh my gosh. So I used to be addicted to the magazines, all those celebrity magazines that like
Yeah.
the Us Weekly and I don't know, I had them, and there was this pair of Coach boots that the celebrity was wearing, and I was, and this was me, and hold on, I'm going to go really Californian for a second. I'm going to go super LA, which is my roots, so I am allowed to do this. Oh my gosh, like I really need these boots so bad because they're so cute and I have to have them. Honey, I really have to have the boots. And so I started calling around. There were 3 pair left. That's it, 3 pair sold out.
Wow.
And one was in Texas, one was in San Francisco, and one was in Beverly Hills. So I was like, let's go, kids. We're going to Beverly Hills. Now realize, like I said, I was raised with hiking. On Super Bowl Sunday, we went to Disneyland as a family. We were we were outdoorsy. We were not even though I lived near Beverly Hills, this was not my thing. And so we park, I go to Rodeo Drive, I find the store, and there's the one pair of boots left. Now, they were half a size too small for me, yet I was determined. And so here I am trying to get these boots on, which they had no zipper. It was pull-on boot, and they were tall. And this is my son. Mom, this is not right. These are expensive boots. And all you're doing right now is spending dad's money on something you don't need. And look, they don't even fit you. At this point, I'm sweating trying to get these stupid boots on. And I was so determined that I got them on. I was so embarrassed. My face must have been so many shades of red. And anyways, moral of that story is I left. I did pay for the boots, and I ended up slipping on the way out. So I shouldn't have bought the boots. They weren't right. It was a waste of money. I ended up having to give them to a friend, and he called me out, and he was totally correct on it. So sometimes that can create a really bad reaction with parents, because as your kids are getting older, they start noticing the things you're doing that's also not okay. And what happens
Yeah.
is you become a household of hypocrisy. And if you don't fix that, and it's the toughest thing to fix, I've worked with parents on this, it's really hard, because this is when kids start resenting you. It builds. It really does. And so it's tough. It's hard to give advice on this, because you really have to have the willingness of the parents to be called out by their kids. And if you can do that, and if you can suck it up and be responsible for your actions and step back and say, you know what, I've actually helped to raise this child who has the correct perspective, then you're growing, and so is your child. And right there, and I have goosebumps as I'm saying it, that is the most connective moment you can possibly give to yourself and your child for your future relationship as adults, because there will be a mutual respect for each other, and you will have an incredible relationship. And that's why today I have an incredible relationship with my kids. And I call them kids. They're young men. They have beards. They're married. But they're still my kids.
There's a couple of important things that you're touching on here. And one is, kind of the lead by example. So what you're teaching them is also your own accountability of, are you living what you're teaching? But there's another piece that I was thinking about as you're talking, and it's kind of around how, like, the perspective you were talking about, where they might not always understand, like, sometimes there is a little bit more room for spontaneity, and sometimes there is the space to, give yourself a little bit more grace, or let yourself play a little bit more. But then there's also times to kind of stay to that plan and, learn and create that foundation of responsibility. So how did you balance those two with your family?
That's a great question. Probably the best way was, okay, so I actually had statistics in the household, and I know businesses call it something different. I call it statistics. So we just had measurable actions that showed the productivity of the household. And these measurable actions were key components of what shows our growth. And that could be from kids' schoolwork and how they're growing in school, to what abilities are they gaining that's helping them to become young adults. Then within the household, we also had our financial statistics were understood. It wasn't that we went over all of the finances with the kids, but we let them know when we were doing well and when we were not. And they understood that when the family was mostly aligned and the boys would be helping us, then the statistics of the family would start to improve. Then the spontaneity and the adventures would get better. because in
Mm.
the end of the day, there is a financial aspect of how much fun can you have, because you can create it, and I can create fun on a shoestring budget, but it's really fun when you don't have one, and you have some freedom there. So the kids understood that they were part of the team, and their actions, their love to their father, them creating a safe household where my husband could come home and relax. And what he loved to do is go out back and shoot some hoops with the boys. And neither one of them, they're both 6'2". He's 5'10". He wanted to play, basketball as a kid. Neither of my kids play basketball, but they would go out and shoot that basketball with their dad because they knew it was something he loved to do. So it's the contributions come in all different shapes and forms, and your kids can give you the most, because if they're really part of that team, then what they're bringing to you is so much joy, so much love, something that you really can't actually get from anywhere else. Because if that relationship is that close, you're getting a very special kind of getting a very special moment with them when they're doing that with you.
Yeah. Well, and I think that connection and that closeness in a family and that trust also comes from having very clear expectations that you're talking about that you've set up for your family, and then also communicating effectively. Because if you can't communicate, you also can't share your expectations. But how did you, apply these to your family, or how did you teach those to everyone on the team?
Great. That's a great one. Communication. Everyone asks me, how have you been married for 32 years? And I always say communication. And then I got tired of saying communication one day, and I was like, just don't get divorced. That was my answer to it. Don't
Don't
get
do it.
divorced. And but communication is the key, because you have to look at, kind of back it up to what stops communication, what prevents communication. So if you are doing things that prohibit communication, now you have a problem. So as simple as when they were little, I would be like, honey, can you go get that toy? Do you see how there's silence, right? Nothing.
Mm,
And
yeah.
at a young age, I taught them the word acknowledge. And
Mm,
so, and I said, look, acknowledge means I hear you, mom. I understand what you're saying. I hear you. So you heard from their first days till they got it. And it probably was by the time they were about 10, 11 years old, and probably even later than that. You would hear me from the front of the car, wherever I am in the house, acknowledge, please. And
mm.
okay, mom, because you're a trainer. Like, and my son, I was like, what were the key points for what I did for you? And he goes, mom, you established me for life. You got me ready. The things that you've taught me established me to be able to be a good husband, to be a good worker, to be able to manage and handle my life. And he has a whole team under him. And so he has to manage his team. And communication is key to anything you're ever going to do in your life. Even if you're in an office by yourself, you still have to have good communication skills to be able to get along on this world. So that was the key point, is really teaching them and getting them to understand what communication is. I think a lot of people will assume that kids know things and they expect it, and they forget to teach it, or the expectation of schools filling in education that's supposed to be done in home.
You also mentioned earlier when we were talking in the episode about the survey that you gave to your children, and you asked them for honest feedback. How did
Yeah.
that go?
Well, I did really well. I got good percentages. So they both They both
Winning.
gave me high grades, which I was really happy about. But I had to print it off because I was like, I'm not going to remember this. Um, so I asked my youngest for some feedback, and he said, I think I can read this without getting in trouble. They said, Mom, you can only use so much of our stories, but I think
Yeah.
this one's okay. And I'm gonna highlight my youngest on this answer. So he said, the things I cherish most: traveling the world, seeing new unfamiliar environments, and exploring the unknown. He lives in Australia now. Being given as many opportunities as possible throughout my early years and the correct education to know what I wanted to achieve and how I could achieve it. That they wanted to do acting school one day, and we were at this little street fair, and there was a booth with a lady who she had an acting school for kids. So both the boys brought her card to me, and they were like, Mom, we want to learn how to be actors, because you're in Los Angeles. And I said, great, work it out. Let me know what we're doing. And they worked it all out, and I became a chauffeur. That was the day I became the chauffeur, and they became actors. They did really well with it. They really enjoyed it. Wasn't their long-term goal, but it was something that they got to do, and they were very successful with it. And then listen to this. This was so interesting to me. He said, the principle of exchange. There is punishment for out exchange and criminal behavior, but conversely, there is reward in abundance for exchange and good deeds done. What? Like, this is my 25-year-old, like, hey babe, what did you enjoy or not enjoy about your upbringing with me? And this is what I get. And then he decided to yank my chain at the end and put some humor in it because it's what he does. And he goes, Halo 2 Combat Evolved on Xbox. And I threw away like 5 Xboxes having mommy meltdown. So in no way, shape, or form was I perfect, because the Xbox, sorry, like stutter. I'm like, the Xbox was such a bad thing in our household at times. It created a lot of strife.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good point, that it's not always going to be perfect. Whether you are running a business or a family or a career, whatever you are working on, whatever project you're in charge of, we can plan and we can set our expectations and communicate right, and, talk about what this is going to look like with each other so we're on the same page, and things will still happen not the way we want them to, right?
Yep.
So that expectation going in, I think, almost makes it easier to handle when it happens.
Just, you have to know your kids are going to do something that shocks you. And as long as you know that's going to happen, and it's probably going to shock you, it's going to be upsetting, you're going to be angry, you're going to be scared. They're going to do something that you weren't expecting. And if you expect the unexpected, going back to what to expect when expecting, but expect the unexpected, just know that, I was thinking about it, like, each family unit has their own dynamic to it. And if you look at a family unit, you see the similarities of the personalities. You see this group. It's like everybody pulled each other in, like that, like it's like whatever you believe in, there's some like spiritual matchmaking going on. And so when you look at that dynamic, you have to realize that you have the family dynamic, but within that, each person is their own individual person. And you have to treat it that way, because, I remember one day I guess I was getting a little too helicopterish or hovery or lawnmower. I don't know. They call so many things now for parenting these days. And my son was getting into dating, starting to meet girls and stuff like that. And I was all over it. I was like, oh gosh, my heart. And
Mhm.
And I'll never forget this day. We were sitting in a parking lot and he looked at me and he goes, "You know what, Mom?" And I was like, "What?" He goes, "You're going to have to just trust me to experience some things and just know I'm not going to do something terribly stupid, but you're just going to have to give me some space and give me some room to be able to experience." And
Yeah.
it was a rough day that day for me because I had to step off. I think he was 15, and he was
Mm.
going through these transitions of breaking through the boundaries that I had put up, and I was going through a transition of having to move the boundaries out a bit, and that's very uncomfortable as a parent. That's you you want to control that environment as long as you can because you're trying to protect your kids. It's just the natural instinct. Go to the animal kingdom. Everybody knows you don't pet a baby bear. Like you just don't. And the same thing with us. We're humans. We want to protect our children. We love them. We love, I read this meme one day that the mother carries her heart on the outside and it goes with their children wherever they go. And it's so true. Um, so that's what I have to say about that.
You also have a gift for us. It's the Unbreakable Family Blueprint. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I thought it would be fun because I do have my course and I do put on master classes and stuff, but I decided for this podcast, and I stayed up last night actually, and created this book that I think gives a really nice outline of what the Unbreakable Family is. And basically it's called the Unbreakable Family Blueprint. And in this, I cover the importance of family systems, effective communication strategies, creating routines that work, fun and bonding activities, building resilience together, and keeping it light and fun. And it can just be a nice little download, your go-to resource, and have fun with it. Read it. You can mark it up for the things that work for you. Use it for the things you don't agree with. Don't. Like I said, every single family is their own living, breathing unit. And not everything I'm going to say is going to reside with you. But I'm trying my best to be able to help with the family unit. There's a lot going on in this world today that I feel like you've got the odds against you. And I just want to put something into your basket that you can use to be able to win and succeed, because right now I don't think the world really wants the family unit to succeed.
Hmm. That's great. Thank you for sharing that with us. And you shared a lot of wisdom today. So, as we walk away from this episode, what is one thing or the most important thing or the first thing that we can all go do right away?
I would say for that is just have understanding and empathy for your spouse, your children, but most of all for yourself. I think
Mm.
moms are the hardest on themselves. I'm always telling mothers to give themselves grace because we beat ourselves up and we think we're doing a horrible job. And
Mm.
you're not. You're trying your best. You're trying to change the things that your parents did that you didn't like, and you're trying to implement the things your parents did that you loved. So all I can say is give yourself some grace, give yourself some love, and you're doing a great job.
Beautiful words of wisdom. Well, thank you so much, Sunny, for joining us today and sharing your story with us. It's been an honor to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really blessed to be on this podcast, and I really enjoyed this interview a lot.
Thank you for braving the inside of your mind with me. The better we understand ourselves, the more deeply we understand the world. And as our awareness grows, life just gets better and better. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a review and share this with anyone else you think could benefit from listening. A quick reminder that the content shared in this podcast is for informational purposes only. I am not a licensed therapist, and the discussions here are not a substitute for professional advice. If you're dealing with a specific issue or need personalized guidance, please consult with a qualified professional. Your well-being is important, and this podcast is simply a platform for sharing insights and experiences. I appreciate you spending this time with me. Until next time.